Hi, everybody. Happy to be with you again, as I was last summer, from the North Channel of Lake Huron on Manitoulin Island in Billings Township. And we are delighted to introduce our three guests for today's presentation. From the Frost Block at Queen's Park, Peter Bethlenfalvy, the Minister of Finance for the province of Ontario and the member for Pickering-Uxbridge. In the nation's capital, Armine Yalnizyan, economist, Atkinson Fellow on the Future of Workers, member of the federal government's task force on women in the economy. And in the provincial capital, Diane Brisebois, President and CEO of the Retail Council of Canada. And it's great to be with you three today. Why don't we start with this? I think we want to get a better understanding off the top from all three of you on how you would characterize the state of the Ontario economy today. Treasurer, why don't you start us off?
Well, good to see you again, Steve. And let me tell you, things are moving forward. The economy south of the border has been growing more than we expected in Ontario as well as the rest of Canada. We've seen employment growth that's exceeded expectations. So that's the good news. At the same time, the virus is not defeated yet. The Delta variant is still a concern. We're seeing parts of the world where additional lockdowns are occurring, like Australia, the sixth time of a lockdown. More measures being put in place, like Israel and the UK, and we're seeing what's happening in the US in terms of spikes. So what I would characterize it is in Canada and Ontario, first doses are over 80%. That's great news, but more to do to make sure that we can fully and safely reopen the economy, as well as bring our children back to school safely.
Armine, how does it look from your vantage point?
First of all, it is a delight to be with you, Steve, as well as Jan and the Minister. And thank you to AMO for convening this incredibly important conversation. I'm super heartened to hear Minister Bethlenfalvy referencing the above average growth in Canada. Compared to the United States, we are seeing employment rebounds that have been stronger, which is great news. We are still far from where we need to be. And so I think it's really important that we understand that if we do exactly what the minister said, which is have safe school reopenings and really double down on preventing further closure in childcare, we can have 50,000 more women working to just get us back to where we were at the outset of the pandemic, just by making sure that we have the same employment rate that we did in February of 2020. So I think there are lots of things we could be doing to get to exactly where the minister would like to see us, which is where everybody wants to get to, is a full recovery. But we do have to get past the pandemic. That does require two steps. First of all, making sure that people are healthy and able to withstand whatever the next wave is. And secondly, that we do repair the lost social infrastructure in the form of childcare because of the pandemic. It's the only part of the economy that got battered by the pandemic, but is required to support the recovery. And we need to do more to fix that.
Lots to follow up on there, and we shall during the course of our conversation. Diane, you obviously represent one of the most critical and important aspects and sectors of our society. How does it look to you?
Well, I'm delighted to hear the minister focused on vaccination and return to normal, so to speak. But I think if you look at retail, Steve, it really is a tale of two worlds. Well, you have essential retailers who have done extremely well, so grocery, pharmacy, but the non-essential retailers are still struggling. We're looking at sales in retail 2019 over 2021, taking 2020 out as the outlier. We're still $1 billion short in sales. So we're seeing slowly but surely customers coming back to non-essential retailers. But because of the fact that we did not have in-class learning, social activities were somewhat restrained, and the return to the office is still a question mark. That continues to have an impact on retail. Just think apparel, for example. And so we're seeing positive signs in Ontario, there's no question, but it's much slower than the numbers would indicate.
We've had some of the longest lockdowns in North America, if not in the entire world. But let's pick this apart a little more. And Diane, maybe you could follow up with this. Which sectors in spite of the numbers we just gave, have actually weathered the storm pretty well and turned a profit?
So we've talked obviously about essential retailers, so grocery, pharmacy, but the other sectors that have done very well are home improvement. So this was really the second wave, if I can use that term, of cocooning. Some of us will remember that term. And so people were staying at home, were working from home. They were saving a lot of money because they were not traveling or going to restaurants and the likes. So home improvement, outdoor fitness are all areas that did extremely well or very well throughout the pandemic. And obviously the other side, as I noted, apparel, footwear, jewelry, those did not. But home improvement was for a period of time on fire, home furnishings, furniture, and the likes.
And Armine, maybe you could amplify the other side of the coin, which is to say which sectors really took it on the chin over the past 18 months.
Well, as I was listening to Diane, I was thinking about real estate, which wasn't mentioned, and mindful that we are talking to AMO, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. Different communities saw it very differently across this province.
Yeah.
For example, there are bedroom communities outside of the big cities that saw an explosion. Of course, cottage country saw an explosion of real estate. And I want to come back to the idea of social infrastructure. If younger families are moving to more affordable places because the big cities have become so unaffordable, then it becomes really incumbent on the municipalities to offer more social services, particularly schools and childcare. And so this becomes, again, an area where we know we have suffered losses. The closest we get to it, and the government doesn't monitor this, but the closest we get to it is a private sector survey that showed that we lost between 30 and 50% of enrollment in childcare centers throughout Ontario, depending on how bad the infection rate was and how big the community is. Don't forget, we also have childcare deserts. We already had them before the crisis hit, but the pandemic is also seeing a loss of healthcare professionals because people are getting burnt out. So I keep coming back to the things that governments can do. Some of it is going to be market-based. A lot of the things that Diane was talking about is very much about markets coming back, and that's a function of purchasing power. But purchasing power itself is the function of how many people can get to work because they have a safe place to let their kids be during the day, or they're elderly that need care. So, what governments can do is make sure that the social infrastructure of care is functioning properly. And I fear that this government has dropped the ball on that.
Well, we have a representative of the government here who I suspect would like to speak to that. We've heard the suggestion that your government's dropped the ball on this, Minister Bethlenfalvy. What do you say?
No, I'm not. I don't know what part of the ball we're dropping. I think we're moving the ball forward, and pretty substantively moving the ball forward. Let's talk a little bit about getting through the pandemic. We provided all 444 municipalities and those represented here at AMO with what we call the Safe Restart funds, including $1 billion this year for transit, for municipalities, and for social services. A substantive amount of money. As well, in the budget, I highlighted an additional investment in broadband. Part of the recovery and getting through the pandemic is very much focused on connecting with people because face-to-face has been more challenged. So in our healthcare system, education, clearly justice, and just even socially. So another $2.8 billion in broadband, bringing the investment to $4 billion. And I think that, the health investments that we've made, which are broad ranging, to Armine's point, long overdue investments in our healthcare system, our physical capacity, hospitals, our long-term care physical capacity, long overdue, but also the staffing to support that. I announced over close to $5 billion in investments to hire 27,000 personal support workers and nurses within 4 years. So that the staffing is in place. So there's many, many angles where the ball is maybe it was previously dropped by previous administrations. We're not talking about it. We're actually building things. We're hiring people to do it, and we're going to move the ball forward.
Well, Armine, let me get you to come back on that. At the risk of torturing the metaphor, he says he's carrying the ball like a superstar halfback down the field. What do you say?
I'm going to keep going back to the well of childcare because there's $11 billion on the table waiting for them from the federal government. And for some reason, this conservative government is unlike, the obituary that you wrote or the eulogy that you wrote the other day about the passing of Bill Davis. I was really struck by how this conservative government seems unwilling to even talk about getting some of that $11 billion into the system, which is the highest cost childcare system in the country. And 1 out of 3 workers that require qualifications currently, before the pandemic, 1 out of 3 workers that required qualifications to provide early learning and childcare to children, to our youngest learners in Ontario, have no qualifications. So I find it a little bit hard to swallow that we are doing everything that we can when we know that the burden on parents, particularly working mothers, has been extraordinary around the world. And Ontario has done nothing to ensure there was a safe school reopening. And yes, we've got new HVAC systems, 20,000 of them in I don't know how many classrooms due for September, but where's the testing and tracing? Where's the government's own reckoning of how many childcare spaces we've got and what they're doing to reduce the cost to make sure people can get back to work? I'm sorry, I don't think the ball is even in their hands, much less carried down the field on this one.
Well, let me get the minister to respond to that.
Just comment on that.
Please.
I think that's, let me just say a number of things. First off, we are obviously very focused on delivering childcare in this province, have been for some time. The early learning, 1.8 billion for 3-year-olds in junior kindergarten. So there's significant supports in place. Armine would know that in the budget that I tabled this year, we doubled the childcare tax credit for families in Ontario. We provided support directly to parents, school-aged children, and doubled it in the most recent budget, as well as we committed to building 30,000 new childcare spaces. So Ontario has been doing a lot previously, the previous government and this government.
BMO, the Bank of Montreal, released a report earlier this month that put Ontario's projected recovery behind Alberta, behind BC, behind Quebec. Our growth rate this year expected to be somewhat behind the 5.5% national average. TD economists came up with the same thing. We know that because of this pandemic, Ontario has taken on massive amounts of debts. I'm not sure what the number is to this moment, but I think it's north of 400, maybe $440 billion. The Parliamentary Budget Office's fiscal sustainability report from this summer found that when Ontario's provincial and municipal finances are looked at together, Ontario will likely, they suggest, be running deficits indefinitely until at least the year 2095. That's a daunting challenge for any Minister of Finance. Yes, I see Peter Bethlenfalvy shaking his head off screen right now. At the risk of using an inappropriate expression here, Minister, let's start some discussion about how we're going to make Ontario's economy great again. What have you got up your sleeve?
Well, number one, I think I will not hesitate to continue to fund expenditures for the safety of all Ontarians. So that's what governments do. I've been unequivocal. The Premier's been unequivocal. We're going to spare no expense, provide supports for healthcare, long-term care, mental health and addiction, and a range of other initiatives to protect the health and well-being of every citizen. That said, when I tabled the budget, as you know, Steve, I was one of the few finance ministers in Canada, including federal, to lay out a path to balance and tell the people of Ontario how we were going to balance the books in a very uncertain time. That's why we put out 3 different scenarios, more of a normal course, a low growth and a faster growth environment. It's still very uncertain right now, but the path forward would be growing the economy. And while you've stated some figures, I've seen some figures that are much more robust for Ontario in terms of nominal growth this year and job growth. We saw in previous recently job growth across Canada, 94,000, 72 new jobs, 72,000, which came from Ontario for the month of July. And we only went into stage 3 July 16th, halfway through the month. So I'm betting on the people of Ontario. I'm not giving up on the economy of Ontario. And listen, we've got almost 15 million people. We have the incredible education system, obviously with Bill Davis's recent passing. His fingerprints are all over our world-class education system. We've got entrepreneurs in retail, as Diane was mentioning, and we've got women, and we will work together to have a more inclusive reignition of our economy. And I'm an optimist, so I feel that we are on our way and will continue to do what it takes to get our economy in a robust position. We're not an island in Canada. We're not an island in North America. So we're putting in place the conditions to allow the private sector to really grow jobs and good jobs in this province.
Armine, you've got the ear of the Minister of Finance right now. If he wants to make Ontario's economy great again, by all means, give him some advice.
I'd like to start by saying I don't think any of us in this conversation would do a particularly good job of governing the economy of Ontario through the public purse strings. And I'm very heartened that the minister has been talking about his first priority is making sure that the basics are in place, and that's what the job of a government is. The focus on debt is just misplaced. What we need to focus on is doing what we need to do right now. And if the debt balloons, then so be it. We've got bigger fish to fry. So I'm really heartened by how the minister is approaching this, how he framed this conversation, and on what the role of the debt is, and how you need to have scenarios because everything is so uncertain right now. I mean, we haven't talked about it, but Ontario was, along with Alberta, the export powerhouse of this country, and supply chains globally everywhere have been shifted. So we don't really know what the future looks like. Operating in the dark is hard for anybody. That said, I think there are things that this government can and should be doing. It isn't how big the debt is, it's how you're using it. We are spending an awful lot of money without making sure that the foundations are solid for the next generation. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but women in families with kids make up 40% of household income. To Diane's point about purchasing power, if women aren't working, there's less purchasing power to see these retail businesses reopen. If we want to make the economy great again, as if that's the sole purpose of government endeavors, you got to make sure that people's purchasing power hasn't failed. Minister Bethlenfalvy ended by saying making sure every job is a great job. We could be doing that in Ontario. You know, you're talking about hiring 27,000 personal care workers. People don't want to do that job because it's not a good job. It's poorly paid. Human resource practices haven't fundamentally changed. You can't pick up benefits. You can't get 10 paid sick days. In the middle of a freaking pandemic, we still do not have 10 paid sick days. So these are things that the government can be doing to make sure that every job is a good job, raising the minimum wage, making sure that people are being valued in these essential jobs. Again, to quote Diane's point, we need leadership. The tone from the top is incredibly important, not just the rhetoric, but the rule changes. Minister Bethlenfalvy has got a task force on economic recovery and the future of work. There is not a single worker on that task force. The person that is chairing this keeps talking about flexibility and work. And I got to say, that's the language Uber has used, and it's Proposition 22 and copycat propositions around the world. I am very nervous that we do have the opportunity to make every job a good job, boosting the economy, getting people back into the workforce that perhaps never were in the workforce in a solid way. But we're letting this opportunity slip between our fingers for I'm not sure what reason, but that's the way I would build the economy of the future right now. We are heading into a period of population aging that will last 25 to 30 years. 1 in 4 Canadian is going to be over the age of 65. We're going to have more people exiting the labor force than entering it. It is our opportunity to upgrade the skills of everybody that comes into the labor market and make sure every job is a good job. This is not only an historic and unprecedented opportunity, it will never happen again. And we are letting this moment slip between our fingers. I seriously hope Minister Bethlenfalvy and his cabinet sees the opportunity that lies right there for the taking for his entire tribe. And he could be, in fact, the Conservatives could be the conservationists of our labor markets. I really hope that they take this moment seriously.
All right, stand by, Minister. I'm going to let you comment in a second, but I want to get you some more advice. Deanne, come on in here. And in your view, what needs to be done to get the Ontario economy rocking again?
Well, I would agree with 99% of what Armine said. However, I always shudder. I always worry when I hear people say we shouldn't worry about the size of the debt. Because if you're a small business, or in fact, a large business investing in Ontario, you know you have to pay the piper. So eventually the cost of doing business will increase. And let me suggest that you can't separate your social and economic strategic plans when you're looking at a budget. They both go hand in hand. But I do believe, and if I were to just add a bit of advice or comments to the minister who's taking all of this in, to be a powerhouse, there's no question that you have to have the best workers, workers who are appreciated and well paid. You also have to have an economic environment that will also attract investments. I look at other provinces, Quebec is one, but other regions in the world where they are aggressively attracting foreign investment, because that money is required to pay for our social safety net and to improve that social safety net. I will, however, also add that I think this government has done an excellent job. Certainly pre-pandemic, it was challenging during the pandemic, Steve, to deal with red tape. Eliminating red tape for small, mid, and large businesses was key. It made a huge difference. Now, during the pandemic, the challenges were many, but that is extremely important. I think the greatest challenge is to find the right balance, but I would never lose sight of the size of the debt.
All right, I'm mindful of the clock right now, so I want to do one more round with the three of you on one last thing. And heads up, this is going to be controversial as hell. Here we go. Should municipalities be allowed to run deficits?
Well, that's a big question, and that's why we're having AMO. That's why we have this discussion every year at the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. I think what we're really focused on right now, Steve, is the pandemic. And one thing that I've seen, certainly throughout this pandemic, and many things I've learned through this pandemic, is working together with our municipal partners, working with the federal government and the provincial government, regardless of stripe. When we work together, we get a lot more done, and we get it done quicker, and we get it done more effectively.
Dan, do you think it would be helpful to the cause of retailers if municipalities were allowed to run deficits, presumably to help out some of your folks on main streets?
This is the toughest question to answer because I'm sitting on both sides of the fence. I'm tempted to say yes, because if they run a deficit, they may not consider taxing or putting in municipal sales tax, which is fear. You put the fear of God in me whenever I hear that. But at the same time, my other hat is my concern over running deficits. So I don't have a final answer for you, Steve, except to say, proceed with caution. The municipalities are the engine of our communities. They are so important, so they should be supported fiscally. Our businesses rely on our citizens rely on these municipalities, and it will be a tough road ahead. So I'm hoping that everyone can work very closely together, because at the end of the day, our businesses will benefit from good public policy and good support.
Last word to Armine on this.
This is not an area that I know very much about municipal finance, but I can tell you just from a strictly economic point of view, if municipalities ran deficits, it would cost them more to serve those deficits and debts than a provincial or a federal level. It just gets more expensive the smaller the unit you get to. So I I recognize where the pressure is. In fact, when the provincial government cut property taxes for businesses, some small municipalities that did have balanced budgets had to raise their property tax rates on residential dwellers. So everybody's aware of how tough this is, this balancing act. I do have to say that I don't think the province is spending enough in some of the areas that a municipality would have to spend in. And I think it should not be that we depend on municipal largesse or, ability to look ahead and say, if we're going to be attracting people, we need to offer more services. There should be a certain level of public service that is available no matter where you live, and it should be bankrolled by the provincial government as much as possible, because we want to make every corner of Ontario a place where people want to live and can live in roughly equal measure of quality of life. So I'm not sure that municipal deficits are the problem. I think provincial spending may be the problem.
That's our time. I do want to thank all three of you. Diane Brisebois, your voice held out. I know you've been fighting laryngitis lately. You did a great job getting through it. Armine Yalnizyan, the next time we talk, I look forward to having you open up some of those album covers behind you. I want to see what's in that collection of yours. And of course, to get an hour with the Minister of Finance for the province of Ontario is a tough thing to do. And Minister Bethlenfalvy, we're grateful for your time as well. And can I just put a pitch in here for TVO? We're grateful always to be a part of this Association of Municipalities of Ontario conference, as we are every year. We learn a lot, gives us good ideas for programs, and I thank everybody for their participation. Steve Paikin from the North Channel, signing off.
The agenda in the summer with Nam Kiwanuka is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.